Hello and welcome to my channel, She's Just Trying. I'm Hearts, and today we're going to be reading a story by Iskander Khan. So he is a well-known story writer on Reddit, and I'm going to be reading his story, The Farm. So sit back, relax, and listen to The Farm, Part 1. The Farm, Part 1 by Iskander Khan. I was never the romantic type, but I don't think you could blame me. Mom and Dad fought like cats and dogs, going through a messy divorce when my sister and I were still young. I didn't believe in true love. I didn't think there was the one. But that all changed when I met Sophie Norris. I was a city kid. I spent all my time hanging around Boston Common with my buddies, before we stuffed our faces with meatball subs of the North End. She was a country girl. She spent all her time on the family farm out in Iowa, playing in the cornfields and eating lovingly home-cooked meals. She was a college student and didn't mind that I was a few years older. Nor did she care about my dead-end job unloading ships at the harbor. We just clicked. She was everything I wasn't. She was smart, patient, well-read. She took an interest in the arts. She was beautiful, and the more we dated, the more I found myself catching feelings. By the time summer came round, I couldn't bear to go like 3 months without seeing her. So we arranged for me to drive out to Iowa to visit her and her family on their farm. I was ecstatic. Despite her progressive attitudes, she was in many respects a deeply traditional girl. So I knew the key to her heart was winning over her parents, and I was more than prepared to do that. So when the day came, I packed my stuff, loaded up my car, and set off for Iowa. It goes without saying that it was a long drive. 19 hours in total, with an overnight stop in a Detroit motel. It was tedious in the extreme, but the prospect of being reunited with her spurred me on. She had given me an address and rough directions, but getting lost among the miles upon miles of cornfields was way too easy. I couldn't call her to ask her to guide me in. She had warned me that the cell service in her area was spotty. So I drove up and down a stretch of road just south of Edinburgh until I finally found someone to ask directions from. They'd never heard of the Norris family farm, but told me they knew of an old dirt road near the place called Rush Lake. I thanked them, but they warned me it wasn't the kind of place that strangers were welcome. I wasn't about to let that deter me though, so I set off in search of it, and eventually found the place they were referring to. I immediately understood what they meant. An old, hand-painted wooden sign told trespassers that they would be shot. Yet I drove down the dirt road anyway, telling myself that the reward far outweighed the risks. After about half a mile of trundling down the old dirt road, I passed through an open wooden gate that led to a big old farmhouse, a cattle shed, and a huge red barn. Frankly, it was amazing that any strangers found themselves wandering onto that place at all. It was tucked away among the corn, a little slice of cloistered heaven, far away from prying eyes. At first, I wasn't sure I had the right place, not until I saw Sophie walk out onto the porch of the farmhouse, an expression of delight on her face. She ran up to the car as I climbed out of the driver's seat, beyond excited to hug her for the first time in weeks. "Alex, you made it! You actually came!" she chirped. Her voice quivered as she fought back tears and fell into my arms. "Of course I did. I missed you too much." We broke our embrace just in time for me to see her family congregating on the porch, and they were exactly what I expected from her descriptions of them. Her barrel-chested father, arms folded in his denim dungarees, looked on with vague suspicion, while her mother smiled warmly at the heart-warming reunion. But I hadn't quite expected her brother to be so huge. He was her junior by a number of years, and for some reason, the image of him as a young boy had cemented in my mind. To see him now, with his frankly colossal stature, was rather intimidating. "Come meet the family," she said, taking me by the hand and eagerly leading me towards the house. It was early on the Friday evening when I finally arrived, just in time for dinner. And as Sophie's mom laid out a spread of roasted meats and vegetables, I made my introductions.
"Good to finally have you here,"
Mr. Norris said in a deep, gravelly voice.
"We've heard an awful lot about you."
"All good, I hope," I replied nervously.
"Glowing, but I told her, if something seems too good to be true."
"Amos, don't be so rude. This young man's traveled a long way to be here," Miss Norris exclaimed before turning to me. "I'm so sorry about my husband. He's a man of many skills, but his socials are sorely lacking." "I get it, ma'am. He's just protective of his daughter," I said.
"You see, Mona, the boy gets it,"
he said before turning back to me.
"Sophie said you were a smart one. But how is it that someone so smart didn't end up going to college?"
"Victim of circumstance, I suppose. Family finances weren't great." I remained polite, but the question hit a nerve. I guess I wanted to learn the value of hard work before I tried higher education. Something that you obviously know all too well. You must have worked your butt off to be able to afford college fees. It was a compliment engineered to make Mr. Norris smile with pride, but nothing registered on his face. Sophie didn't have any loans, and wanted for nothing. I had a huge amount of respect for her father, long before I had ever met him. "So, Mr. Norris, do you sell your produce directly to supermarkets? Or are they like distributors or something?" I asked. Sophie's mom and dad shot each other a look, before her dad cleared his throat apprehensively.
"We're not selling a farm, son," he began. "We're purely substance here. Let's just say I've been lucky with a few investments I made over the years. But enough small talk. Finish your food and I'll show you around. You got a lot of work to help me with tomorrow."
I really did try to finish what was on my plate. I was half-starved from the day's long drive. But there was something about the way the meat tasted, something slightly bitter and nauseating about it. I've never been a fan of liver, and I suppose that was what it was. Being a substance farm, there was a good chance that they ate every single part of the animals they slaughtered. But God help me if I offended them in the first hours of meeting them. So I ate as much as I could stomach, then ate out like I was full. There was only one reason I found myself just slightly hesitant to visit Sophie on our family farm. That was the fact that, as she explicitly told me, her father would expect anyone willing to date or marry his daughter of being capable of working on the farm. In her words, a good farmhand showed diligence and fortitude, things that she too hoped to find in a potential partner, let alone what her father would expect of them. I considered myself a hard worker, and working down at the harbor could be physically grueling on occasion, but I knew it would pale in comparison to the kind of thing Mr. Norris would have me doing. The wake-up call came at 4:30 a.m. I thought I was hardcore for getting up at 6:30 for work days, but here was Sophie's dad, fresh as a goddamn daisy while the sun had barely even grazed the sky.
"Get up, boy, we got work to do. Meet me at the cattle shed in 15 minutes. We'll see what you're made of."
It was extremely early, but that wasn't why I was so tired. I had hardly slept a wink, having felt terrible all night. I'd never really eaten liver before, and I guess it just didn't agree with me. So there I was, exhausted, stumbling towards a cowshed in the middle of rural Iowa at a truly ungodly hour. I lit myself a cigarette as soon as I walked outside. If I didn't have time for a coffee, I sure as hell was getting a smoke in before work commenced. But as soon as Sophie's dad laid eyes on the lit bud between my fingers, he scowled.
"Sophie didn't mention you were a smoker."
"Yeah, I'm trying to quit. She keeps pushing me to give up. You obviously brought her up to be—"
"Life is precious,"
Mr. Norris interrupted.
"A man should do everything in his power to give himself longevity. Give that thing to me."
I took one last drag on it before handing it over, watching as he walked away over to a nearby trash can, stamped it out, and threw it away.
"Don't smoke that stuff on my farm again, boy."
He struck me as the kind of man who could be very warm when he wanted to be. But in that moment, the look in his eyes struck the fear of God into me.
Ever milked a cow before?
He said after a long uncomfortable silence. No, sir.
Well, you're gonna learn today.
As he led me into the cattle shed, the first thing that struck me was the smell. Thanks to an 8th grade field trip, I'd been around the farm animal before, but I had never smelled anything so awful in my entire life. A stench of rot and sour milk. Mr. Norris set up a stool near one of the cows, then proceeded to roll up his shirt sleeves. He told me to watch carefully, and for a few moments, I did, but my eyes were quickly drawn elsewhere. I had never seen a cow as sickly as that ever. She was skeletal. Her eyes were a milky white around the pupils. I watched in disgust as a fat, black housefly landed right on the soft, moist lining of her eye. She didn't seem to react at all.
Hey, I told you to pay attention,
Mr. Norris suddenly growled. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. I turned my attention back to the milk pail that sat beneath the cow's wrinkled udders, mapped by a web of black veins. What was in the milk pail looked wrong. It looked sour, like it had the consistency of yogurt. But I watched as Sophie's dad took a small metal ladle, scooped up a thick, gooey liquid, and brought it to his lips with a wet slurp.
Ain't nothing like it. Strengthens the bones. Here, try some,
he said, offering me the ladle. I'm good, thanks. Maybe a little too early for me.
Suit yourself,
he said, taking another slurp before letting the ladle's contents slide back down into the pail with a sickening slosh.
Now go wash up yourself and get some breakfast. I need you in the beet field.
End of part 1. Thank you for watching my channel, She's Just Trying. If you like what you've heard and what you've seen, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like the video for the algorithm. I'm Hearts, stay safe, and bye!